Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. Bold and Beautiful. Today, Rich furious with Eric for siding with Katie. Eric Forrester has lately taken on the job as Katie Spencer's lead developer. Still, Eric is keeping this under wraps for now. Eric wants to see if he's a fit for this job and if he can work with Bill. Spencer's nose is everything, but ultimately the verity will come out. Eric Forrester opens up to his woman Donna. Logan Forrester is caught in the middle on both sides. Donna is married to Eric and she's a family to Brooke, Logan Forrester and Katie. Donna doesn't want to get the blame for what Eric has done. Donna didn't firstly know about his plans. Now Donna has grown veritably concerned. Donna is upset about Brooke and Rich Forrester's response to Eric's plan. Eric believes in Katie and wants her to have a lesser chance at making her fashion house a success. Eric is right. Rich and Brooke need to grow up. Will Eric eventually get the point across and move Rich that he knows what he's doing? Eric Forrester reassures Katie Spencer Eric had first offered to be her advisor to Katie. Still, formally Eric sees Katie's possible contrivers. He isn't about to allow her to deal with amateurs. Eric sees that he has to step in to help. This was far from the original plan, but Eric has no other choice. Eric cares too important about Katie to let her crash and burn. Eric is also worried that he was forced into withdrawal because of Rich and Brooke. These two didn't show Eric a bit of fidelity, so why would Eric owe them any? Eric made it plain that he didn't want to retire and that didn't count to anyone at Forrester Creations but Donna. Katie is giving Eric everything that Rich refused him. Katie Spencer is bound to get the condemn. Katie isn't the bone who approached Eric, he came to her. Eric offered to consult with her company at first and also donated to design for her. Eric is furious that Brooke and Rich are trying to stake claim to the name Logan. Eric is well apprehensive of the fact that all three sisters partake that name and have every right to use it. Brooke and Rich will no doubt condemn Katie for Eric's choice to work with her, but Donna knows the verity. Eric feels that Katie deserves a chance to make her dreams come true and is determined to help her. Eric doesn't believe that Katie deserves to be treated the way Rich and Brooke have done him. Will Eric make Katie's fashion house a mega hit? Eric does not want to go to Forrester part-time. Eric Forrester said no to going to Forrester part-time. This happened when Will Spencer started to feel jealous. On Monday's episode of The Bold and the Beautiful, Eric Forrester went to Logan. Acted like he was just stopping by. Then he said he wanted to take Donna Logan Forrester out to lunch. Brooke Logan Forrester asked Katie who her new designer was going to be. Katie changed the subject and asked Brooke why she came to visit. Eric Forrester was still thinking about going to Forrester. Brooke did not want her business to get in the way of her relationship with her sister Katie. Katie was not so sure they could get along. When Brooke left, Donna got really mad at Katie. She was angry because Katie had hired Eric to be her designer and Katie had not told her about it. Donna thought this was going to cause a lot of problems. She asked Eric to please come back to Forrester Creations even if it was just part-time. Eric said no because he did not feel respected at Forrester Creations. Katie told Eric that things would be better at Lone and Eric believed Katie about Lone. Eric was raised to respect people who are older than him. So he thought Brooke and Rich Forrester would find out the way. At Forrester Creations will talk to Rich. He wanted to learn everything about the business. Will hope that the problems with Katie would not hurt his job at Forrester Creations. Rich told Will not to worry. Then he started talking to Brooke. Brooke told Rich about Eric's visit to Logan. Rich asked Brooke why Eric went to Logan. Brooke gave him a made-up reason. Brooke was worried that her relationship with Katie was not very strong. Rich did not seem to think that things could get any worse. At the showroom, RJ Forrester was saying things about Electra Forrester's jewelry. They were both surprised that they had never met before, even though they are related. Electra Forrester asked RJ Forrester a lot of questions about the places he had been to and what it was like to go to boarding school. After a while, RJ Forrester asked Electra Forrester about her life in Los Angeles. Electra Forrester told him that she has a boyfriend and his name is Will Spencer. Some of the women who work at Forrester were looking at RJ from across the room. They saw him talking to Electra. When these women got to the design office, they started complaining. They did not want Electra to have RJ too. They thought Electra was too perfect. When Will came into the office, he heard the women talking about RJ. Will was curious about what they were saying. So Will decided to sneak a peek at what was going on. He saw Elektra and RJ in the showroom. RJ was telling Elektra about all the trouble that Luna Nozawa had caused. The women at Forrester like RJ, and they do not want Elektra to have him. RJ wondered if that didn't bother Luna and seemed like he was questioning her happiness in the relationship. Will and RJ are on the verge of becoming fierce foes, so stay tuned for all the shocking news to come. Ridge stood firm in the doorway of Eric's office, his jaw tight, his casket rising and falling as if he'd just run a marathon, yet the only thing he'd been contending was treason, because there sat his father, calmly subscribing documents beside Katie Logan, and in that moment Ridge realized this wasn't a scuttlebutt, wasn't a misreading, wasn't some temporary alliance. This was Eric Forrester openly siding with Katie against his own son, and the sting cut deeper than any commercial achievement ever could, his voice exploding across the room as he demanded to know how long this had been going on, criminating Katie of manipulating Eric at his most vulnerable, criminating his father of forgetting everything the Forrester name stood for. But Eric didn't blench, didn't apologize, didn't indeed look shamefaced. Rather, he calmly slid the brochure down and reminded Ridge that Forrester Creations was Ridge's particular area, that Katie had vision, fidelity, and heart, and that he trusted her further than he trusted the endless power games Ridge had been playing, which only fueled Ridge's rage as he paced like a boxed captain, declaring that Katie was a Logan, that her birth had always hovered the Forrester heritage, that this move would fracture the family beyond form. Yet Katie rose, meeting his fury with quiet strength, telling Ridge that the real fracture came from his turn down to see anyone additional's perspective, that Eric wasn't weak, he was wise, and he chose her because she heeded, because she admired his dreams rather of using his name as an armament, and those words struck harder than any poke, forcing Ridge to defy the possibility that his father's choice wasn't treason, it was judgment, and Ridge abominated that further than anything, because Eric continued, reminding him of every time Ridge had bulldozed others in the name of what's stylish. Of every moment he dismissed family when it didn't align with his control, and Ridge snapped back that everything he'd done was for Forrester Creations, for the family, for the future. But Eric combated that a unborn erected on fear and dominance wasn't one he wanted to leave before, that Katie represented renewal, collaboration, and a ground between families that had warred for decades, and Ridge laughed plaintively, claiming this was just another Logan preemption in disguise. Yet deep down he felt the earthquake of mistrustfulness, because Eric's eyes held a resoluteness he hadn't seen in times, a spark of purpose reignited by Katie's presence, and that alarmed him, because it meant Eric wasn't being controlled, he was choosing, and Ridge stormed out, covenanting that this alliance would destroy everything, ignorant that the halls he walked were formally buzzing with whispers, workers picking sides, Brooke seeing the shift in the air, Steffi bracing for war, and the Forrester conglomerate standing on the edge of a family earthquake that would ripple through every relationship, every love story, and every secret yet to be revealed. Brooke set up Ridge in the design plant hours latterly, gaping at untreated sketches that blurred together as his wrathfulness coddled, and when she asked what happened he unleashed everything in one breath, how Eric chose Katie, how his own father looked at him like a dictator rather of a son, how the Logan name now sat at the center of Forrester power, and Brooke tried to soothe him, reminding him that Eric had always followed his heart, that Katie wasn't the adversary, but Ridge could and hear it, because all he saw was history repeating itself, Logan after Logan insinuating, reshaping, claiming what he believed should remain Forrester, and Brooke's defense of Katie only widened the crack, making him wonder if he was standing alone in his own family, while across the hall Katie scuffled with her own storm of feelings, knowing Ridge's fury was ineluctable yet still paining over it, because she no way set out to steal anything, only to help Eric feel alive again, to give him a mate who saw further than heritage, and Eric comforted her, saying Ridge's wrathfulness was born from fear, not verity, that one day his son would understand this wasn't treason but elaboration, yet indeed he felt the weight of what he'd burned, because he knew Ridge wasn't just furious, he was strategic, and the Forrester heir at law would not surrender without a fight. And that fight began the moment Ridge called Steffi, his voice low and determined, telling her that Eric had crossed a line and that Katie now held power that could shift everything, and Steffi, always her father's dogface, promised she'd return incontinently, her mind formally contending with counter-moves, alliances, and influence, while at Spencer Publications, Bill eavesdropped whispers of Eric's decision and scowled, seeing occasion in Forrester chaos, because when elephants disaccord, outlanders profit, And he began planning how to use Ridge's rage and Eric's rebellion to his advantage. Ignorant that Hope, eavesdropping her father's schemes, would run to advise Brooke, pulling her into the web of conflict, as every Logan and every Forrester felt the earthquake of war, and Ridge, driven by wounded pride, began meeting still with board members, reminding them of his track record, planting seeds of mistrustfulness about Katie's influence, suggesting that Eric's age made him vulnerable to overpraise, framing his father's choice not as visionary but reckless, and those seeds took root, because fear spreads faster than trust, and soon Eric noticed the shift, the side ganders, the hesitance, realizing Ridge was marshalling against him, and when father and son eventually brazened each other again, it wasn't in private but in front of directors, models, and contrivers, Ridge criminating Eric of risking the company's stability, Eric fighting that Ridge's power games were the true trouble, and the room held its breath as decades of love, contest, and heritage collided, Katie stepping forward to take responsibility, saying she'd step away if her presence was the problem, but Eric stopped her, declaring he'd not retreat from a choice made with clarity, and Ridge's eyes burned as he realized this wasn't about Katie presently. It was about who Forrester Creations belonged to, whose vision would define its future, and whether blood alone entitled him to rule. And in that consummation commodity hardened within him, a resoluteness to prove his father awry, to reclaim control indeed if it meant tearing piecemeal what remained of their bond, while Brooke watched from the doorway, heartbreaking, understanding that this feud would not end with contracts or board votes, but with scars etched across every relationship, every love, and every dream bound to the Forrester name, because in Los Angeles, power was no way just business, it was particular, and Ridge Forrester had just declared war on his own father, a war that would expose secrets long buried, test commitment beyond form, and force every character to choose between love and heritage, knowing that formally this battle truly began, nothing in their world would ever be the same again. Ridge's war strategy began in silence, in the calculated pauses between meetings and the subtle shifts in influence that only someone born into power could execute, and while Eric believed time would soften his son's wrathfulness, Ridge was stropping it into a blade, visiting long-trusted board members under the guise of concern, reminding them of Forrester Creations' fragile position in an unpredictable request, invoking recollections of once Logan appropriations, painting Katie not as vicious but as a doorway through which query could submerge, and those whispers spread through the halls like incense, light at first, also inviting, until indeed workers who adored Eric began wondering whether his heart was leading the company into peril, and Katie tasted it incontinently, the formerly warm grins cooling, exchanges stopping when she entered a room, and though she commended in Brooke that she stressed getting the symbol of a family collapse, Brooke prompted her to stand establishment, because stepping back would only confirm Ridge's narrative, yet Katie plodded with the weight of being the spark that burned a generational fire, while Eric, proud yet vulnerable, began pushing forward with new creative enterprise, determined to prove that this chapter of his life wasn't a retreat but a belle epoque, launching a daring couture line that intermingled heritage with ultramodern daring, placing Katie at his side not as a statuette but as a mate. And the success of the first show stunned the assiduity, earning praise that compactly silenced Ridge's crusade, but rather of yielding, Ridge reframed it as luck, averring that one palm didn't justify the threat of Boulevard, and when Steffi returned, her presence boosted everything, because she carried her father's fire and her forefathers' blood, and she challenged Eric directly, asking whether he trusted Katie further than his own family, and Eric, sick yet unvarying, told her that family meant further than lineage, that it meant growth, honesty, and courage, and Steffi, torn between reverence and fidelity, walked down uncertain, giving Ridge the opening he demanded, as he rallied her to his side by appealing not to pride but to heritage, asking her if she wanted her children to inherit a company defined by concession or by strength, and that question visited her, pushing her near to Ridge's cause, while across City Hope scuffled with guilt, feeling her family's history dragging Katie into a storm she no way sought, and when she brazened Ridge, contending for peace, he indicted her of serving from every Logan palm while demanding Forrester rendition, and those words cut deep, fracturing whatever fragile ground remained between them, because Hope realized Ridge no longer saw individualities, only sides, and Bill, ever the opportunist, began circulating rumors in the press about internal disharmony, transferring shockwaves through investors, forcing Eric to defy the palpable consequences of this feud, and in a rare moment of mistrustfulness, he asked Katie whether this was worth it, whether love for renewal justified the cost, and Katie, eyes shining with both fear and resoluteness, told him that surrendering now would educate Ridge that intimidation wins, that elaboration dies under pressure, and Eric, moved by her courage, reaffirmed his choice, intentionally sealing the conflict's coming phase, because Ridge responded by calling for a board vote, framing it as a necessary evaluation of leadership stability, and the day of reckoning arrived like a storm pall over the Forrester structure, every corridor humming with pressure, Brooke gripping Ridge's hand, torn between her heart and her history, Steffi standing firm beside her father, Hope watching from the sidelines, soliciting for consanity, Katie seated beside Eric, her countenance masking the earthquake within, and as votes were cast, Ridge's aspect no way left his father's, not in abomination but in hopeless defiance, a son demanding to be seen, and when the census revealed a split board, neither palm nor defeat, only impasse, it came clear that this war couldn't be won by figures alone, that the true battle lay in perception, fidelity, and the hearts of those who believed in the Forrester name, and Eric rose, not as a defeated primogenitor but as a visionary, telling them that a house divided couldn't stand, that this company was born from passion, not dominance, and that if his own son couldn't accept a unborn erected on collaboration, also maybe the topmost heritage he could leave was the courage to change, and those words echoed beyond the room, beyond contracts and shares, into the souls of everyone present, forcing them to defy what they truly valued, because Ridge realized in that moment that defeating Eric might bring him further than power. It might bring him his father ever, yet pride held him. In turn, and as he walked out, the distance between them wider than ever, Los Angeles buzzed with enterprise, ignorant that this feud was only beginning, that secrets yet hidden would face, that alliances would shatter, that love would be tested against ambition, and that the question at the heart of it all, whether heritage is inherited or earned, would review every Forrester, every Logan, and every dream bound to their integrated fates. In the fate of the deadlocked vote, the structure felt visited by what might have been, hallways echoing with steps that formerly carried confidence but now carried mistrustfulness, and Ridge retreated into himself, not in rendition but in recalibration, understanding that brute force alone would not dislodge Eric or Katie, so he shifted tactics, fastening on public perception, orchestrating subtle leaks about creative differences, and leadership query, knowing that in their world character was currency, and when fashion blogs began assuming about insecurity at Forrester Creations, Eric felt the pressure strain, not because he stressed for himself but because he stressed for the contrivers, the seamsters, the interns whose livelihoods depended on calm leadership, and for the first time he wondered if his stage was hurting the veritably people he sought to cover, yet every time mistrustfulness crept by, Katie reminded him why they began, why passion signified further than fear, and that conviction came his anchor, while Brooke, caught between Ridge's rage and Eric's resoluteness, tried to broker peace, inviting them to regale under the pretense of family consanity, only to watch the evening unravel as Ridge indicted Eric of choosing a Logan over blood, and Eric replied that blood without trust was pointless, and the words struck like glass shattering, leaving Brooke in gashes, realizing that love couldn't mend what pride refused to release, and Steffi, witnessing the emotional risk on her mama, began questioning her constancy, because she saw in Eric not weakness but courage, and in Ridge not strength but pain, and that internal conflict cracked her certainty, creating a chink Ridge didn't anticipate, while Hope, inspired by this shift, appealed to Steffi's heart rather than her fidelity, reminding her that every generation had the chance to end the cycle of war, and though Steffi didn't answer, the seed was planted, and Bill, seeing Ridge's instigation falter, made a bold move, offering Eric a cooperation that would isolate Forrester from reproach and capital strain, but Eric declined, unintentional to trade one battleground for another, proving that his stage wasn't about rebellion but integrity, and that turn-down spread through the company like quiet fire, reigniting respect for the man numerous had undervalued, forcing Ridge to defy a verity he despised, that his father's strength lay not in dominance but in immutability, and that this strength was winning hearts, not through fear but through belief, and for the first time, Ridge felt commodity further shocking than wrathfulness query, because power could be seized, but fidelity had to be earned, and he realized that if he continued down this path, Palm might leave him alone at the top, girdled by a company that adhered but didn't believe, and in a rare moment of vulnerability, he stood outside Eric's office. Late at night, hands swimming over the door, torn between the appetite to fight and the need to be a son, and outside, Eric goggled at an old snap of Ridge as a boy, flashing back horse laugh before heritage came burden, and both men, separated by pride, participated the same pang, yet neither